little help from your friends, because there's no way you can write, a lot of papers and get a lot of grants and get awards as you get older, unless you have a lot of good friends and you're a little lucky along the way. So I'm going to take you on the journey that I've had in this area, which has been a fun one. And so I beg your tolerance as we sort of whip through the history of my career, but I think it sort of touches on mentorship and opportunities and lessons learned, and that's what I'll be sharing with you today. So my journey from the classroom into the courtroom, because I spend a lot of time in the courtroom nowadays testifying against cigarette companies. So you'll see a little bit of that as part of this. So the lessons learned here. So lesson one, take advantage of the opportunities that come your way. And when I think back on my career, where I started out at the University of Michigan, I was going to be a physical education teacher. I did my student teaching. I was all set to do that. I graduated from Miami University in Ohio, the other Miami. There you go. I saw somebody on the agenda from Miami, so it's great for the Red Hawks to be represented here. But I was going to be a PE teacher, and I did an internship during my junior year with the New Jersey, Public Health Department. And the person who sponsored the internship for me was a graduate of the University of Michigan School of Public Health. They got an MPH there. He said, "You ought to think about a career in public health." And so I applied to one place, the University of Michigan, and I don't know how I got in, but they actually gave me a scholarship to go there. So I got married to my wife, very young, going off to the University of Michigan, and ran into these folks, Rusty Rosenstock, Marshall Becker, Don Pinkner, and Jack Kirsch, and really got a great education in public health. And then they must have kept me around because I did my PhD at the University of Michigan before I went off to do smoking. And of course, there's nothing like a good theory. And of course, the health belief model sort of goes synonymously with those who trained me. And we did a lot of great things on measurement and how to apply the theories in different ways. And we're challenging whether this is the best theory versus Larry Green, who I said he had the best theory. And it was a great opportunity with mentorship, really training you. Because when you're in school, take advantage of collecting the tools in the toolbox that will take you wherever your journey may lead. Because the second lesson is timing is everything, or sometimes you get a little lucky along the way. Because I ended up going to Buffalo, New York. So I finished up my degree, did a little stint at Wayne State University where I taught in community medicine as I was finishing up my PhD. And then Rusty Rosenstock had a good friend of his, Saxon Graham, who was at Roswell Park, actually SUNY Buffalo, but he had been at Roswell Park before, and they said they needed somebody for their cancer prevention program. So I told my wife, I said, "We're going to move to Buffalo, New York." She said, "What?" I said, "Well, don't worry about it. We'll only do it for 5 years, and we'll be out of there." So we spent 30 years in Buffalo, New York. And, I ran into some really great people while I was there. And these are just some of the faces as I was thinking of people that I work with. John Vina, who I recruited down to MUSC, runs our public health science program there. Jim Marshall and Andy Highland, who was a student of mine, who's now taken over the job that I left when I departed. And when I arrived at Roswell Park, getting into smoking, they had already figured out smoking was bad. But what happened was, you can see we hit the peak smoking cigarette consumption in the United States in 1981. And I arrived right in 1981 at Roswell Park. And of course, that was just followed by the lung cancer epidemic, which was lagged by about 10 to 15 years. So, Kurt Metlin, who was my first boss there, he said, you might think about doing tobacco work. You're at a cancer center after all. They didn't have a stop smoking program, and that's sort of how I got involved in doing this. And spent a lot of time, looking at why people smoke. And 40 years later, I've been asking the same questions over and over and over again. Why do people start? How do you prevent kids from starting? Why do people persist in smoking after they've gotten, started? And how do you help people get off of it? And so lesson 3, the find answers to the hard questions, you need to work with really smart people, and I've been very fortunate to do that. I've had many great students over the years who've surpassed anything that I've ever done. Carlos Home is Hine is in the, he was the practice guidelines there. Mike Fiore gets all the credit for Carlos, was the physician along the way who helped him, Gary Giardino, Safima, Rich O'Connor, and others. And of course, I arrived at Roswell Park with the grant opportunities, and Joe Cullen and his team at the National Cancer Institute, they decided to stop studying whether cigarette smoking causes disease and tried to focus on the behavior of smoking and how to end it. And that really set up an opportunity with great people that I've worked with there, Tom Glynn, Michelle Block, and Don Choplin, and Bob Bollinger over the years. My first grant, after writing 7 grant applications out of the box with, reject along the way, I finally got a good grant through the Behavioral Medicine Committee. There were nobody ever gets funded, they said, through that committee. So it was the Committee of Death, with hundreds of applications, and they'd only select 1 or 2. I managed to get a score, they funded me, and then I was able to connect with the grant-funded self-help group, and this was some of the people who were part of that group, Tracy Orleans, and of course Dave Abrams, who a few years ago in Charleston, I came and listened to Dave's acceptance speeches, the research laureate, Jim Prochaska, and Carlos DiClemente, and Ed Lichtenstein, among others. There were a whole crew of us, and they made us work together on our research projects, which was a great learning experience for somebody just sort of starting out in their career. So why do people start smoking? That was really the first question. Young people, of course, have been the critical factor in the growth and decline of every major branding company over the last 50 years. That's according to R.J. Reynolds. So that's why they start smoking. The cigarette companies need them as part of their business model. And it's important, the significance of youth starting to smoke. Cheryl Perry, another research laureate and member of this group of family members I just saw, was involved in the 94 Surgeon General's report and also in the 2012 report, where they talk about the role of smoking in adolescence and how nicotine addiction really takes hold at a young age and so on. So, a lot of my area of research focused on, where kids get their cigarettes. And so, when you have young kids, and back in the 90s, it wasn't like, it is today. The kids could go in and buy cigarettes just about anywhere. So as they got just a little old enough, I started sending them out to buy cigarettes. And, the tobacco sting, as we used to do it. And, we did a lot of studies of where kids get their surveys, their purchasing habits, the legal scale, and so on. And it was really quite different when I was doing that work in the late 80s and early 90s. And then, of course, the documents rolled in, right after 2000, and a lot of those pesky documents rolled in my way. At Roswell Park, you've heard about the Master Settlement Agreement. There was a side agreement to the Master Settlement that made all of the documents, the Tobacco Institute, the Council for Tobacco Research, they were originally incorporated in New York State. And I sort of had developed a little bit of a reputation in New York on tobacco, and so the state attorney general at the time called me up and said, "You want these documents? They're turning them over to the New York State Archive." There was no money. I said, "Oh yes, Roswell will take them." 16 million pages of documents later, they arrived in moving trucks every 2 weeks for 5 years. I set up a document scanning activity, and it really opened my eyes. And it was, as a research scientist, what an opportunity to look at the, the marketing documents from the companies. And replacement smokers was really what it was all about. You can read some of these documents. For the pre-smoker and learner, the physical effects of smoking are largely unknown or unneeded or actually quite unpleasant or awkward. However, in contrast, once the learning period is over, the physical effects become of overriding importance. So they were sort of defining this, and actually Claude Teague, he was a pretty good scientist. He actually laid out the physical effects as well as the psychosocial effects. The little scale there, if you get a negative, it's actually a negative effect. If it's a positive, that's very important. So for the confirmed smoker, you get 3 positives for nicotine, by the way. Then you get these positives down here, like group identification and self-image enhancement to start you out. You couldn't have written this any better. And by the way, he wrote that in 1973, so that'll be telling you something about Reynolds. And of course, Reynolds used this information to design their cigarettes for the beginning smokers because it was part of their business plan to get the youth started to smoke. In fact, they knew why, and they defined it nicely here in this 84 document, which is a look back over 50 years of marketing to young people, where they say younger adult smokers are the only source of their term replacement smokers. Less than 1/3 of smokers, 31%, start after the age of 18. And that, by the way, is becoming regular smokers. Only 5% after the age of 25. If young adults turn away from smoking, the industries must decline, just as a population which does not give birth will eventually dwindle. And of course, the success of Newport for Laureate has been fantastic in the last few years. 1978, the base of our business is high school students. And you can go to the party, marketing in bars, and so on. We got involved in doing that. This is my neighbor there. He played soccer with my sons, Mike Procknell, and he's there with the Marlboro girl at the local bar. I said, my son, as he got a little older and stopped buying cigarettes in the tobacco stings, he went to the bar marketing and so on. And, they would sign you up and, take your license and so on, make sure you were legal, and then you'd end up on the mailing list. This is my son here playing the Marlboro game, and they collected their Marlboro bags as a result. And what happened after that? Well, they got mail, and he got lots of mail, by the way. And in fact, even debit cards, because if you sign up some of your friends, you actually will reload your debit card for another $25, which, if you're 18 years old, that's a pretty good deal, by the way. And of course, Hollywood, the marketing to kids.
These pictures are from Superman 2. Marlboro, made by Philip Morris, is shown at least 13 times.
They're able to equate their product in the minds of people with a superhero, somebody who is squeaky clean. And that association occurring over and over and over again in the movie is bound to have an impact, particularly on young, impressionable minds.
Corporations acknowledge that they like to get their products in movies. It's another form of advertising. I asked the Tobacco Institute why Marlboros were shown so often in Superman 2.
Do you think cigarette manufacturers had something to do with that?
Yeah, I think that...
Cigarette manufacturers don't make movies.
But what do you think, that the movie maker just showed Marlboro on his own?
Perhaps the movie maker was a Marlboro smoker.
Interesting hypothesis. It can be tested, by the way, in the tobacco document. So thankfully, we've been able to test that. Here's the letter confirming the $42,000 that was paid for the placement of this scene where Superman is thrown into the Marlboro truck. And of course, this happened 3 years before Ann Browder appeared on 2020 to say, oh, maybe it's the Marlboro smoker, the producer was a Marlboro smoker. So how do we prevent kids from starting to smoke? Well, the cigarette companies provide us some useful information here. Why does one begin to smoke? There's general agreement to the first part of this question. The 16 to 20-year-old begins smoking for psychosocial reasons. The act of smoking is symbolic. It signifies adulthood. He smokes to enhance his image in the eyes of his peers. But the psychosocial motive is not enough to explain continued smoking. That, by the way, is a presentation from Helmut Bacon to the board of directors of Philip Morris in 1969. And so what do you do to counter that? You denormalize. So there's some great programs. This one from Minnesota, aimed at young kids.
If you think this looks ridiculous, remember, smoking is just as natural for you as it is for them.
Of course, if you show this to young kids, they become very concerned about these animals smoking. So those are not real cigarettes. They brushed in the smoke. Just take the cigarette in the mouth because animals are too dumb to smoke. But you also have to have shame. So this is our group that I used to work with, the Youth Voice Club in Buffalo, New York.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, my pearl. How many days this year? 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 your son, how many people have you killed today? Marlboro. Happy birthday, Marlboro. How many deaths this year? How many deaths this year? How many deaths?
A little morbid,
How many deaths?
yeah, because people do die from this behavior. And shame helps, and a little
I
advocacy
know
as
that the
well.
industry is marketing to kids. I think all you really need to do is just go to your local convenience store and take a look around, really.
It's on the sides of the building, it's on the windows. And then when you walk in, you see the grand shrine of cigarette sales, which are these huge walls of tobacco behind the counter.
There's something to that, where you have this positive, when you're a kid, you're going up to the counter with your candy bar, and you put it on the counter, and what is behind you? Marlboro logos, packs of Camels. This constant branding image behind you for these positive things that you're doing at the store.
I can't imagine but what an impressionable kid going in that store, seeing the big tough guy off the motorcycle go up there and buy a pack of cigarettes, isn't getting a kind of an image about what adults do. They buy cigarettes.
Store marketing techniques include detailed agreements which the companies pay the retailer to maintain. They involve placement of particular brands, price promotions such as discounts or buy one get one free, and the arrangement of signs which accompany the displays. Here, the cigarette sales are combined with a campaign to support the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, an extremely positive image next to the cigarette packs. This kind of marketing works. A recent report in the Archives of Pediatrics showed that in-store marketing increased the likelihood of kids becoming smokers. So, where do the companies do the most marketing?
There's documents showing that greater marketing efforts are placed in convenience stores that are near schools, for example, as opposed to places that are further away from schools. So while they may say we're only interested in stealing customers of someone else's brand, their practices in their own industry documents show something different.
So, and of course, a lot of this shaming and education and denormalization has worked, actually, and you can see we've had great success with the lowest rates of smoking among young people. I'm glad I'm alive to see it, by the way, because, when I sort of was in the midst of this in the 80s and the 90s, even into the early 2000s, you sort of wondered where things were headed. But it's headed in the right direction. But we still have a long way to go. Why do people persist in smoking? Could be because it's an addiction. By the way, Helmut Wakeham was very nice. He gave us the answer to this question back in 1969. Why does one continue to smoke? Well, the psychosocial motivation wears off. Some other motive force takes over. We are of the conviction in view of the foregoing that the ultimate explanation for the perpetuated cigarette habit resides in the pharmacologic effects of smoke upon the body of the smoker. And in my early work at Roswell, where I was running stop smoking clinics, so that's actually how I learned to write grants that were better. Actually, was running these clinics, and smokers taught me, coming to a cancer center to quit smoking, that it was a lot harder than we thought it was going to be. It wasn't just educating them about the statistics on smoking and disease. And I had some really good students, as they said here, Giovino and Carlos and Safima, and we did studies on withdrawal symptoms. Some of the early work actually documented the time course of withdrawal after abstinence from cigarette use and weight gain after quitting and mitigating that weight gain early on. The nicotine gum actually first came out. And so you get this nicotine addiction cycle that, now we can talk about where choice is the loss of control. You get into this addiction cycle as you develop a tolerance to the drug. And then it's a chronic relapsing disorder that we're really dealing with. So how can you help people stop smoking? Well, nagging people really doesn't work. So ex-smoker guns down, nagging wife. Well, you can't force somebody to quit. But fortunately, most smokers say they want to get off, actually a higher number than that now that we've done the studies. And about 5 in 10, about 50% of smokers are trying to quit at least one time each year. So we did a study years ago where we asked people, what population-based interventions might motivate you to think about quitting smoking. And what smokers told us was drugs and money. So nicotine, offer a free nicotine patch or gum. That was nominated by 3% or a chance to win money to stop smoking. They said these things like graphic warnings and high taxes. Yeah, that'll have some effect, but the drugs and money were really what they were telling us. So we developed a whole bunch of interventions around efforts to help people quit smoking, incentives, free quit aids, providing free nicotine patches, and offering money as a way to quit. And so the use of effective transdermal nicotine in primary care, that was one of the early studies that we did in the early 90s. This is another one looking at Medicaid patients that we did, again, offering free medications. When New York City decided to enter into the fray, actually Mayor Bloomberg had been, replaced Rudy Giuliani as actually a responsible public servant. When he came in as the mayor, he had a very good health commissioner, Tom Frieden, who said, we're going to, make bars and restaurants smoke-free. And so they announced this. They got it past the city council. It was going to happen. And Tom Frieden said, we ought to be able to provide free, nicotine replacement therapies to smokers, who might need some help during this period. And I said, well, we could help you do that, because I ran the New York State Smokers Quit Line. So I said, well, we can do that. I actually had some conversations with the Quit Line in New Zealand, the only other Quit Line to offer free stop smoking medication. And the person in New Zealand said, you better get ready. You hire some extra people. You can't spend, 20 minutes on the phone doing a detailed assessment. You're going to have to make it, very short, right to the point, and get them the medication sent in the mail. So we set it up. And Tom Frieden did one press event. The evening, actually 5 o'clock news, on the day that the Clean Indoor Air Law in New York City went into effect. And, I go downstairs to the quit line. I said, we getting any calls yet? Because we hired all these other people. We revamped everything. And a few calls rolled in, but not much. 6 o'clock news. Yeah, we were invading Iraq. And the phone number, get your free nicotine patches, ran on CNN 24/7 as people were watching the tanks rolling into Iraq. And we received 400,000 calls in 3 days. It's the only time when I ran the quit line, I did have AT&T contact me and said, you've got to do something, you're jamming the lines. Anyway, free works, by the way, and it showed you the pent-up demand. I mean, people literally in apartment complexes in New York City to get through to the quit line were passing the phone around to other people, their neighbors and so on. So it really worked. We did a bunch of studies on free nicotine patches to show that it really does help people quit smoking, and certainly gives people hope. Certainly there was showing pent-up demand. But it wasn't always enough. The patch really is not the greatest. It's a partial support. And back then it was novel because it was sort of expensive to get. So we started to go in to utilize these bribing campaigns, quit and win campaigns, and so on, which worked pretty good. But one of the things that we found is a lot of smokers are inadequately informed. They actually think nicotine is a dangerous drug. It's not a benign drug, but it's not dangerous. It's the smoke that is dangerous, not necessarily the nicotine. And so you go back into the documents here, they were saying this in the early 70s, the study they had done on the cigarette substitute study at Reynolds. They said people really don't understand nicotine. They think nicotine's just as harmful. It's just sort of nicotine arrives around with the tar that everybody talks about. Anyway, we did mass media campaigns. We had a lot of fun with these. And these were a series of ads that we ran in our local paper, talking about what's in a cigarette and the effects. We borrowed heavily from Australia and other places. We were shameless in taking their ads and running them ourselves. We did our pee in every puff campaign and urea in cigarettes, which is true, by the way. It's one of those things that they have. And reality TV on the internet.
quit smoking, bobquits.com.
We did a couple of those. Actually, this is back in reality TV was the big thing, and the Legacy, American Legacy Now, the Truth Initiative, did these, really clever programs, and they sponsored Bob, and then they had another one, Mary's. We had a local Mary that we brought in for that one, followed her on the radio as well, running the cessation service. And I think they were pretty successful, but when you look at predictors of quitting, it comes back to how addicted people really are, and it's hard to get addicted people off. We found that motivational factors predict quit attempts. So all this kind of background of driving and free and all that gets people, sort of motivated to make a quit attempt. But in the end, there are different factors that actually relate to whether people are able to stay off, mainly how biologically addicted they are. And of course, it's not just a habit, as we learned in '88 from C.M. Cook when they talked about nicotine being the drug in tobacco that causes addiction. And it's a brain disease. And, it's the cigarette delivering the addictive substance in a very efficient way into your airways, a huge surface area, unlike your mouth. You put, gum in your mouth, it's the surface area of a tennis ball. You put it into your lungs, you got the surface area of a tennis court. So rapid delivery of the nicotine is really the delivery system that makes a difference. So it's got me focused on studying the product. And so in the mid-90s, I started doing some work on cigarette filters, because a lot of people want filters and low tar. And anyway, filters aren't too good. They don't work. Basically, it's a scam. And defective filters, so, you can, let's see, we're not going to get, there we go. There's the filter fiber in your lung. So that's a filter fiber harvested out of the lung. So when you have a little filter tip made out of cellulose acetate in a cigarette, everybody know what cellulose acetate is? None of you will know if you're young enough, because you all use digital cameras. But back in the old days, we used to actually put film in a camera. And the film in the camera is made out of cellulose acetate, and the inventor of the cigarette filter is Kodak. And so cellulose acetate is translucent. You see through film with the chemicals to capture the image on a film. This is, these little fibers break off. There are about 12,000 in every cigarette butt. They spray a little glue on there. They call it plasticizer to hold them onto the filter tip. But they actually break off because if you put too much plasticizer on it, would actually filter out all the stuff, and then you wouldn't get anything out of the cigarette. So how does cigarette smoke causes cancer? Well, it's because of the behavior caused by nicotine addiction. The persistent day in and day out use of cigarette use caused by nicotine addiction is what causes the sequence of changes, exposure to the carcinogens, and detoxification, and activation, and the DNA damage and repair. And when you overwhelm your DNA repair mechanism, that's when you end up in our cancer centers. And, that's, so you got to stop it at the root cause, which is nicotine addiction. So the cigarette companies figured this out long ago. Smoking has both physiological and psychological effects. If there's no inhalant, there is no lung cancer in the respiratory tract. That's 1967. So this is just showing you how nicotine addiction, constrains the choice of people who get hooked on this product. It causes the exposure, and then you get the diseases. And so precise control of nicotine addiction is really key to the sale of cigarettes, because if you don't get people hooked and keep them satisfied, then they will leave that product pretty quickly. So, now we have the very low nicotine cigarettes. I got involved in doing some of this work back in the early 2000s period, where we were studying the effects of Quest-3, actually a genetically engineered tobacco, very low nicotine, and actually facilitates people getting off of cigarettes because it reduces the reinforcement for smoking. And today we have electronic cigarettes. And I know there's all kinds of debate, and this will be the only time I talk about electronic cigarettes today, but you ought to be thinking about this for addicted smokers, and non-smokers have no business using any form of nicotine. I would agree with that. But electronic cigarettes is the current focus of some of the work that we're doing in different countries around the world. So, the major conclusion from the 50-year progress report, so the 50-year anniversary report, was that the tobacco epidemic has been sustained by the aggressive strategies of the tobacco industry, which deliberately completely misled the public about the dangers of smoking. So lesson 4, get involved with people who really want to make a difference. So I have over the years, this is Alan Blum, who's a primary care doctor who started an organization called Doctors Want to Care, a group that I got involved in, and John Slade, an addiction medicine physician, and they were a little crazy, but they really taught me a lot about the tobacco problem and understanding. Here's Alan.
And sometimes we simply can't let tobacco companies in our communities go unchallenged, which is why DOT makes house calls at many tobacco-sponsored sporting and cultural events. These house calls generate media coverage and serve to embarrass both the tobacco industry and the local groups who are taking their money.
Look what chewing tobacco does to you. We just appreciate it. You got plenty of room for you to do
We're not doing anything demonstrating right now, so we're done. We did all what we had to do here. Do you guys take any responsibility for what you're doing, allowing these people to come in the door like that?
Sure we do. In fact, they can use the sample here at school. They don't do that.
Why not? What's wrong? Why not the sample?
Well, we've asked them not to do that.
Why not? Why shouldn't you allow them to sample?
Stop this right now. I'm with the Rodeo Association.
Yeah.
We just like to go outside. We'll provide a place for you to do that, and we are going to take you out here in a nice way.
Yeah, fine.
We're not going to listen to you.
Fine. Perhaps protests are a little uncomfortable for some, but they bring results. Gradually, these house calls are raising public awareness and laying the foundation to throw tobacco out of sports.
So Alan was a little crazy, but he did make people uncomfortable and got things changed. And that's get involved with a lot of smart people. I had the opportunity to work with Ron Davis and Simon Chapman. I was deputy editor for the journal Tobacco Control for a number of years. Great opportunity for me to learn from some of the best out there. And then other people, Dave Burns, Lee Paul from California, Greg Conley, Cheryl Hilton, Tom Frieden I mentioned, and Ursula Bauer have been really great colleagues, and as well as Ken Warner, Dick Daynard, Frank Chalupa, and I mentioned John already. And I sort of showed you the Robert Wood Johnson because they actually played a big role in providing some of the research that pushed this advocacy and policy change. Because what they recognized early on, doing smoking clinics with smokers was like trying to go up an ice hill. For every smoker you might get off, you get 3 more starting on the other end of that. So they recognized we needed interventions that had big population effects, and strong government action makes a difference. And so a lot of my work, went from individual behavior change into population-based change. Obviously, cigarette taxes being a part of it, clean indoor air was another one that was a part of the things that I was doing. And in fact, this is one of the early studies I did on measuring secondhand smoke back in when we called it environmental tobacco smoke, a term that was coined by the cigarette companies back in the 80s, or this is 1990. And then we got a little wiser, asking people questions about their exposure to secondhand smoke isn't so great. But we started using monitors to do this, and started showing up in bars and restaurants in your local neighborhood, measuring the amount of dirt in the air caused by secondhand smoke.
Just about every day, a non-smoker in Western New York dies because of secondhand smoke. New York's Clean Indoor Air Act has cleared the air in public places. But in tonight's medical report, Dr. Peter Ostro shows us that secondhand smoke is still dangerous.
So get to know the local medical reporter in your neighborhood.
When outdoor air pollution gets bad, we can feel it. And sometimes there are warnings like this.
It is suggested that persons suffering from respiratory distress curtail outdoor activities because of that.
When air pollution is at its worst, we're supposed to stay indoors. But if you live with a smoker, indoor air can be even worse.
You typically think about, outdoor air, smog, industry emissions. There's a lot of nasty chemicals in that, and secondhand smoke is really no different.
The tiny polluting particles in the air can be counted, and the EPA regards less than 15 micrograms per cubic meter as good air. That's what we found in a smoke-free hotel room.
Very low level of fine particle air pollution. This is a good environment that we're in right now.
As an extreme example of outdoor air pollution, the huge forest fire in Colorado 4 years ago raised the particle count in Denver to 200. The EPA calls that very unhealthy. We compared it to the level in a hotel room where smoking is permitted. The smoke was supplied by a simple device that sucked air through a lighted cigarette.
After smoking only 2 cigarettes, the level of air pollutants in this room was over 250. If that was
sales of over 400.
That's smoke in a bar.
You get the idea. Not everybody was happy about what we were doing at the time, so occasionally in Western New York, we get these bumper stickers, and we'd have the TI Truth Squad, the Tobacco Industry Truth Squad. They would be deployed out to testify in public hearings and so on. But we, got involved in doing a whole bunch of studies to look at what happens when you clean up the air, what happens to the local economy, attitudes, and whether it actually helps people quit smoking. And did a number of studies to look at this in New York City and in other counties and around the world, actually. In fact, I bought about 50 of those little devices, which were only about $1,000 each. I had some money from the Flight Attendant Medical Research Institute, and I deployed them around the country, or around the world, actually, and we did air monitoring all over the world. I've got publications in Hungary, in Hungary. I can't read it, but I did it with some medical students there. By the way, they're smoke-free as well now. So public tolerance began to change as we cleaned up the air. And then, international focus with my colleague Jeff Fong, Ron Borland, Gerard Hastings, Dave Hammond, and Ann McNeil, among many others. So the framework convention, timing is everything. So I met Jeff. I'm in Buffalo. Jeff's in Canada, University of Waterloo. And back in the early 2000s, Canada put these graphic warning labels on their cigarette packs. And I said, gee, right across the river, they got these great packs over there, and we have these little warning labels stuck on the side of our packs. And maybe we should do something. So we got together. Ron Borland was doing a little sabbatical at the University of Waterloo, and that's how we thought up the ITC, International Tobacco Control Policy Research effort. And Nancy Kaufman and Robert Wood Johnson gave us the initial grant to start a study in 4 countries. We did the US, Canada, England, and Australia. And in hopes that this was just prior to the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. This is the first international treaty on a health, only treaty actually that exists on a health topic, requiring countries to implement these things, pictorial warnings, comprehensive clean indoor air, and others. The U.S. has not signed the Framework Convention, so we've been serving as the control group for the other countries. But it's been useful to evaluate using between country comparisons, because you can't, I haven't been able to convince government regulators we'd like to do this randomized controlled trial. Would you mind just holding back while we get this other place that's going to do it, so we can actually flip a coin and make that happen? It doesn't work that way, but we use these between country comparisons, longitudinal studies, and it's led to a lot of different studies. In fact, it's been so successful, we have studies now going on in, I think, we're up to 29 countries around the world, and a lot of interesting stuff. New Zealand, by the way, Philip Morris just announced that they're going to stop selling cigarettes in New Zealand. They're going to offer their new alternative nicotine product. What a natural experiment for us. We've got the data before and after. Back in Canada, they were the first pictorial. We've done many studies looking at the effects of pictorial health warnings. And this is just showing you the difference across a variety of countries, with text warnings versus pictorial. And you can see it didn't matter whether you were a high income or a low income country. Basically, you see that the pictures make a difference. Ireland was the first country to enact a comprehensive smoke-free policy. We looked at the effects here. This is in restaurants. You can see it just goes away almost completely. Not so good in Japan because they have a partial law, and not great in China. Beijing, as part of the Olympics, to try to institute a smoke-free policy for a brief period, but it was done, somewhat half-heartedly. Australia, the first to do plain packaging. We've done work there. Philip Morris, as I mentioned, is getting out there. So Jeff and Ron and I have tried to summarize our methods and sort of the approach to tobacco control on the international scene in this paper here. So litigation, this will be the final area. So I ended up in the courtroom actually about 20 years ago. I was approached to do some cases with the master settlement in the mid-1990s, and I haven't stopped. In fact, I've done over 150 trials against the cigarette companies. They have people, I'm pleased to say, that shadow me around, that come from trial to trial, and they're there to pull out everything that I've said that I forgot that I said. But it hasn't been easy suing cigarette companies. The first lawsuit was filed in 1954 as early evidence on smoking and disease was coming out. They have an army of attorneys that are very smart, and they try to shift the assumption of risk from them to the individual smokers, who they say should have known better. By the way, this warning label was created by the cigarette companies. The first warning label, a day after the Surgeon General's committee met, it was the executives for the cigarette companies meeting together and saying, oh my gosh, they've taken away our best defense, causality, because the Surgeon General determined that smoking causes lung cancer. And they actually were very careful about how they determined causality. And so they said, maybe we should think about warning labels on the cigarettes. They're going to come anyway, and we need to preempt the field. In fact, FTC was going to put out their warnings. Remember, they were going to go on advertising. They never showed up on advertising for another 8 years. Their strategy is always to delay as long as they can, because that helps them to sell cigarettes. So the documents, as I said, arrived. This is the basement of Roswell Park. That's my middle son there. He got a summer job. Actually, a couple of my sons did summer jobs at Roswell Park, shrugging around the documents. I got some really great people. I hired a guy from Kodak and document scanning, and librarians who were outstanding, who helped me organize all this stuff. And this is sort of the crowd on the boxes there, because it was really their effort that has created the digital index. I know it's at UCSF, and I know Stan Glantz loves to take credit for it, but it was the index for how you search that was created by the librarians at Roswell Park. And actually, go back here to Mike Pekulowski. Mike Pekulowski, Travelocity, okay? That's Travelocity. He created Travelocity, but he hated cigarette smoke. And when the documents became available, he was a computer whiz. And so he helped us figure out OCR. So you want to OCR these documents. So what's OCR? Optical scan recognition. That didn't exist really. It was early, new technology. So a lot of smart people figured it out, and he helped us develop the early material and put it up on a website, and kept his servers in his basement until we finally moved him to Roswell. And then I said to Stan, I'll give you everything that we have. You can keep it at UCSF. And of course, there have been whistleblowers along the way who helped. I've gotten to know all of these guys, and they were really courageous in most kinds of things. And as the documents came out, the truth began to come out. We can't defend continued smoking as free choice if the person is addicted. And we got to write, articles and so on. It was easy, just writing right out of their documents and just telling the story. The failed promise that they made in 1954 when they said they were going to tell the truth, and that research organization was going to do one thing, just determine whether cigarette smoking caused disease, particularly lung cancer, and then we'll provide factual information to the American public. That's what they told the Department of Justice when they sent the Articles of Incorporation in 1954. They said, that's the limits of our power. That's why they lost in the Department of Justice lawsuit, because they had violated what they had told the public through the Assistant Attorney General of the United States. So a tidal wave of cases came as the documents came out. We had the MSA, of course, which jacked up the prices and did get us some early efforts, I think successful efforts in limiting marketing, particularly to youth. It created the American Legacy Foundation, but most importantly, it required the release of documents. And I've worked with some really fabulous people over the years. These are really the people that have been outstanding attorneys. Ron Motley was with the MSA, Stanley and Susan Rosenblatt down in Florida, the Engel case, Baron Phillipson behind the scene legalese. He's really just a paralegal that pulls together the information, and some really talented people. Judge Terrell out of Pensacola, you'll probably never hear his name. But Judge Terrell stood up in the first Engel case that went all the way to the Supreme Court and got upheld. And that's why there's been a tidal wave, because of Judge Terrell being a very good, fair judge to hear the evidence. And of course, one of the first lawsuits, they made a big mistake with Susan and Stanley. They settled out against the flight attendants, which was one of the first cases to go to court in Miami on behalf of Patty Young and her colleagues who had been riding around in airplanes full of cigarette smoke for many years as part of their job, the canaries in the coal mine. And then they sued the cigarette companies. The industry settled. That provided the resources for Stanley and Susan, a husband and wife team, to sue on behalf of Florida residents harmed. And actually, it's known as the Engel case. Dr. Engel was the pediatrician for their 9 children. That's Dr. Engel there, who died of lung cancer. That's Stanley and Susan. An 18-month-long trial. Many of us testified pro bono in that trial, by the way. We went in a couple of times in different phases to this particular courtroom. I know it well. The longest-running civil case, being on a jury for 18 months. That's the Engel case. And that jury, by the way, for information, the only Surgeon General, Julie Richmond, actually testified in a tobacco case. He testified. The verdict came in at $145 billion, just one state. Pretty amazing. Of course, it got appealed and then overturned, and now we're doing the Engel progeny cases that are going on today. This was out in California, Betty Bullock. It's been a struggle, beating the cigarette companies. They got a lot of lawyers on limited funds. But here, in the Betty Bullock case, the jury found with substantial support that Philip Morris' conduct was reprehensible, and it was. This evidence was overwhelming and uncontroverted. And originally, the jury was so upset they gave a $28 billion punitive damage award. That was reduced to $28 million, so they reduced it quite a bit. That's been the strategy of the industry, just build it into the cost of doing business. And this is the case down in Pensacola with Judge Terrell, which got $28 million for Ben Martin. So far in Engel, it hasn't been too bad. This is better than NIH grants, $1.3 billion in awards against the cigarette companies, a lot of gray hairs, 150 trials. And we're now moving off to Boston, where we're doing some additional cases as a result of this case in 2010 going up to the Supreme Court there. So lesson 5, think creatively about what you do and try to spread some truth along the way. You can see some display that I have over here. I've created these exhibits. I've created films that you can download offline. This exhibit is on the design of cigarettes. You can walk around it when you get a chance during the conference here. We have a nice film if you want to use it for teaching to your students, 17 minutes long, that gives you the history of the cigarette, the modern cigarette, and how it came about and was marketed. We've done one on the Surgeon General report for the 50th anniversary of the Trademark Convention, and one on tobacco on trial. Since litigation has been a big part of public health. So lesson 6, my final lesson of the day, is always remember who your best friend is, and there you go. That's the end of my talk. I know I'm between you and a drink in your posters. So, yeah.
You mentioned that nicotine is relatively harmless, and I know in the 50th anniversary Surgeon General's report there was a little bit on potential effects of nicotine on youth and executive cognitive processing, and the evidence wasn't super strong. With like 4 pages on it. Could you comment on your beliefs or perception of knowledge on whether nicotine is probably not a good thing for youth to
it's not a good thing for youth, in part because the developing brain is underdeveloped with regards to executive function, the frontal lobe, where you begin to make rational decisions, and is overdeveloped in an adolescent for reward. Which is why teenagers tend to often go for something that makes them feel good and maybe regret it after they've done something stupid. And so those connections they're vulnerable. So youth are vulnerable to all kinds of addictive substances, so not just nicotine. And so, I mean, does it alter forever the brain? That's an open question, I think. There's some animal data that's been cited by CDC in the 2016 report on electronic cigarettes. I don't think we know. And, with Juul out there, which is a efficient, because it's easy to use and conceal, nicotine inhaling device. There are kids that are using it more frequently. We're going to have to see what's going to happen. So I would say we don't know. So, is it something that's concerning? Absolutely. Are they better off on Juul than Marlboro? 100%. Much better off on Juul than Marlboro, because you don't want kids doing a lot of dumb things. But I think you can almost say the same thing if a young teenager is going to Starbucks every day and getting caffeine. Except caffeine in a Starbucks might make you fat, but it's not going to necessarily make you go become a smoker. And so the data on Juul becoming a smoker, we published a study up to Juul. Dave Levy's in tobacco control. I encourage you to take a look at it. Looked at 5 data sets, reliability, 5 data sets looking at smoking and vaping. And up until basically 2017, all of those data sets showed us as vaping went up, particularly after 2014 is when vaping rates among kids started to go up dramatically. Cigarette sales went down. This year, in our own data that we've looked at, we do have a study coming out, I think, in British Medical Journal. Dave Hammond is the lead author on it. What we found is, as Juul came up, we did see an uptick in vaping, as has been reported by others. That's good, because we don't know backwards with our own data. And cigarette consumption among teens, 2017 to 2018, flat, so not declining. So I think the story is we're going to need some more data out there to really have the answer to the question as to what it's leading to. So that's what I know. Others may want to comment. Albert, I'm sure, has his own opinions about it. So, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Cummings. That was a wonderful talk. For those of us that have listened to these, having these historical talks are really phenomenal. So I'd like you to now ask, sort of maybe put the same different approach you took to the present problem, which is that we now have smokers. We have a population, particularly among low-income folks, where there is none of what we see in the rest of the population is happening. These innovations, but interventions are not working as well. Can you suggest any recommendations of population-level approaches? Policy is one thing, but even just the approaches you've taken for those of us that are trying to now, tap into that and figure out how do we have the same successes in low-income populations as we have had.
The most significant population approach would be to set a standard on nicotine to lower the use liability of cigarettes and other combustible tobacco. If FDA did what they said they were going to do, that would make it's a dagger in the end of combustible tobacco. And the other stuff will float out. People are going to migrate, perhaps, to other things. The illicit trade is not going to happen. I know that's the industry's line. Oh, we can't do this because illicit trade will happen. People are not growing tobacco in their backyard. And by the way, if you just take tobacco off a tobacco plant and chop it up and roll it in a piece of paper, you're going to choke. Cigarettes are a highly traded, engineered product. So that would be the number one intervention in setting that level. In fact, in the document, one of the things that I discovered, and it took a while because, after all, 80 million pages, that's a lot of stuff to go through. Thankfully, the librarians are very good. So when you go into a library, you can go to your card catalog and find things. Or now it's electronics, so just like our virtual library, you can find things. You can actually go figure out the threshold level of nicotine. And the industry figured this out in the 70s. And so the FDA has it right. Their level that they proposed is below the level that will create and sustain addiction. And that will end. You'll have people who will socially smoke, but they're not going to smoke as addicted smokers. So that's number one. In the meantime, we're doing studies in our emergency room. We get a lot of low-income smokers who come there. Everybody comes into our emergency room, and our emergency room doctor said, I said, we should do something about smoking. What can we do? He said, well, you can do anything you want as long as people in my emergency room don't have to do anything. So, okay, that's a change. So what we do, electronic health records is a big thing. So we know everybody that comes in and they're home discharged. Because if they go into our hospital, we have the bedside counselor and do all that kind of thing, which is a great intervention, reaching lots of people. But the home discharge group, we'll call them back. Within 3 days, they get a robocall because we're cheap. So I hired a company that does, a robocall out to the smokers. We, validate their smoking and say, would you be interested in getting, be referred to the quick line and get you free patches? And yes, if you get them. So it's hard to reach them. We get about a third. Take us up on the offer. So a robocall, a robot on the other end, not even a person, and they'll take the call or transfer it immediately to the quit line where they get connected. So going from 0 delivery of an intervention to 13%, there are 80,000 emergency room visits to our hospital, just our little hospital, downstate here. So that's a big intervention. So I think those are simple, cheap. It's not perfect. So I think, behavioral health programs, we need to do a lot more there. Electronic cigarettes, I'm a skeptic as to whether it will appeal, although I do say in our behavioral health programs, we see a lot of people using them for a lot of different reasons. So they're there. Vaping's not going away. It's a more efficient delivery system for a drug. So technology is here. It ain't going back. Figure out how to harness it for the good and try to mitigate the bad. All right. Any other questions? Thanks very much.